Welcome to a conversation on the future of customer experience in the contact center. And today I'm joined again by someone I've known for a long time, Simon Shaw. Simon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, Paul. It's great to see you again. My name's Simon Shaw. I work for IBM. I lead our contact center practice across EMEA and have the pleasure with working across lots of different industry sectors on what is a very fast-moving and transformative part of a lot of organizations. But you and I worked together a fair while ago, so it's good to see you again. And what are you up to at the moment, Paul?
Great, good to meet you again. So I work for Vonage, which is a cloud-based software company in the area of contact centers, unified communications, messaging APIs, and so on. My background is really from New Voice Media and contact centers. And last time we spoke, we were talking about transcription and emotive analysis and things like that. And what we wanted to talk about today was some of the real-world applications of post-call speech analytics. Well, I'd like your thoughts, Simon, on where you see, the number one applications of that kind of technology.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting area because those of us who've ever run contact centers have always struggled a bit with the whole QA process, the standard having to listen to call recordings or schedule some time to listen to calls, and you end up only hearing a couple of calls per agent per week and things like that. And is that truly a representative sample? So I think, having the way that technology is moving forward now and the fact that there is this ability to not only record all customer interactions across all channels, so not only the voice channel, but then being able to present them in a sort of more consumable way to quality assurance teams and supervisors, and potentially being able to provide them with, areas to focus on. So whether that's key trends that are coming out, or maybe even within calls where there's potential issues around whether from a regulatory environment, has someone missed something or opportunities have been missed around things like that. So I certainly think seeing it as a sort of a way to enhance that whole QA function is a core aspect of it. But what are your thoughts?
I want to almost bring you back to where you began there, because we both worked around many contact centers globally. But what I see often in QA is exactly what you said: sampling and tiny sampling. So a small overworked team tasked with sampling 2 calls, 3 emails, 1 chat per agent per month even. And I've seen things like that. And I think, well, anyone who knows a little bit about statistics knows how statistically invalid those kind of samples are going to be. So just directing that team to calls that are interesting, let's say, right? And not even well sample 1 long call, 1 call from this country, and 1 short call. Really? So, but actually using some form of targeted direction to say, these are the calls that are interested. And then we come to, and why? Why do this? And what are the reasons why QA exists anyway, Simon, thinking about, agent conversations?
Yeah. And I think it's quite interesting because, again, traditionally, maybe we've seen QA, a bit like the old supervisory function, is there to spot errors and problems as such, really. But maybe organizations should be rethinking that QA function as not only it is a quality assurance function, but actually how can they collate that data and insight to feed it back into the organization about where things are going wrong? Because a lot of the time we know that customer service and support functions are there because maybe a journey or something is broken further up the chain as such, really. And, again, maybe starting to re-look at those roles as, yes, it's important for coaching and development of agents and stuff, but just as importantly, can we find ways to coach and enable our customers to be better? So is there areas that things are going wrong from a customer perspective is really key as well. So that's quite an interesting thought process to, again, relook at the roles and their responsibilities. And, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, or, any other thoughts you have on the sort of what the QA function should be like in the future.
Yeah, and I do have a view, which is, the traditional view of QA as the policeman or police person in the organization, providing coaching, really not quite coaching, but probably telling off to agents is something traditional but misguided now, in my view. And I know on one of the next videos we do, we're going to talk about the future of the roles in the contact center, because certainly I think supervisors need to be coaches now, and you can't outsource coaching and agent skill improvement to a different function, in my view. So what does QA therefore? And I think it is to spot trends. It is to analyze how things are working to make business improvements. But also, this is an era of huge need for compliance. And I think compliance with regulatory requirements, and a good example is the pharmaceutical industry or the consumer goods industry, where it is mandated by a regulator that if a caller, an end customer, says something, I can smell burning, or this machine is hot, or it's melting, there's smoke coming out. It's mandatory that the agent then follows a particular set of words or a script: turn the machine off, take it outside, don't use it, well exchange it, whatever. And the regulator has to come and audit that happens. So what does the company do? Employ a QA team to ensure that the agents are doing it. But how do they do it? They sample. And that's the broken part of the process. How expensive is it to get a statistically valid sample to ensure that the regulator continues to give you your certificate? Wouldn't it be better to, in effect, listen to every single conversation that takes place? And Simon, do you have an application that's would have similar merit?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, and I think that's where certainly the AI and cognitive conversation starts coming to the fore, because AI is banded around all over contact centers, but with the ability to do real-time transcription and then have an intelligence that can, as you said, pick out and spot these trends and provide real deep insight into what's going on, and provide that guidance, whether it's from a regulatory perspective, a compliance perspective, whether it's from a pure softer skills perspective, or just insight into an e-commerce or an online journey and where things are breaking. So I think that's really key. And obviously IBM and yourselves have some really good technologies around the solutions around that whole AI piece. So yeah, absolutely agree with you on that.
So if I was the CEO, if I was the head of some particular big part of the company, I would challenge the people running this part of the organization, the customer facing piece, to say, tell me what's going on. Tell me what people are talking about. What are the conversations that are happening? And how do they answer today? Because they happen to overhear a coffee room chat, because they sampled some calls or some emails. Does that give a valid view as to what's going on? And I think the ability to ask questions of the system now, and to be able to say, I want to know how many conversations or how many calls took place. I want the trend, in fact, where in the call, the caller talked about this. And I want a total view. And then I want to segment that and analyze that to get the trend out. And I can make a business decision about what to do. That, to me, is the power of this function. And it gives, to me, the QA organization a completely new lease of life. Simon, any closing remarks?
No, I totally agree with you. And I think as you said, it plays into a conversation we're going to have later around, again, how much these technologies in the call center are starting to change the roles that exist within the traditional contact center, and how important it is for organizations to be thinking about future roles alongside future technology.
Let's talk about that next. Thanks a lot, Simon.
Thanks, Paul.